Hello and welcome to lesson 1 of GCSE Geography. What we're going to attempt to do today is get your geography book up and running, have a quick overview as to what the course actually entails, what topics we're going to cover, and actually do lesson 1 of the course. Now, before you begin, and what I'm about to say applies to the start of every lesson, you're going to need to have the following things to hand. First off, a sturdy A4 notebook or exercise book. Now, I don't mind what colour or pattern these are, but it does need to be sturdy enough that it's not going to fall apart too quickly. This is going to be your geography exercise book. You're going to bring it back to school with you when we go back and continue working in it, so it needs to not fall apart. Make a label for the front of it with the following details on it. Now, you might not know which teacher you have yet. We haven't confirmed the classes, so you might want to leave a line to fill that in later, but you definitely want to put book 1 on the front somewhere because we need to identify which book is which later on when it comes to revision, as over the duration of the course you will have filled in more than one book. You're also going to need all the usual equipment that you would have with you in class. Okay. Optional equipment includes a few highlighters. Now, that's entirely up to you if you want to highlight what you think is important as we're going along. Some of you quite like to have really colourful books, and actually I would to some extent encourage that. It makes it a lot easier to revise from later on. You'll also notice that with each lesson there are worksheets in the folder along with the PowerPoint. You're going to need to have printed those out and have them to hand for each lesson ready to go. Now, not all of us have printers at home, myself included. Not all of us are able to go out and get a new A4 notebook and all of this equipment. If any of those apply to you, do not worry. Give the school office a call and I've got a backup plan in place whereby we can help you out with regards to the notebook, the equipment, and the printouts of the worksheets. Okay, so if you've got all of that ready to go, let's begin. So first off, what we're going to do is set up your new geography book. Now you're going to need 2 sheets to do this. So turn to the inside front cover, and this very first sheet here, I want you to stick it on the inside front cover of your new geography book. This is a breakdown of the entire GCSE course. Now what you'll notice is the course is broken into 2 units, Unit 1 and Unit 2. This pretty much works out as Unit 1 in Year 10, Unit 2 in Year 11. Now each unit has 2 core themes and 2 optional themes. Every school across Wales does all the same core themes, and then each individual school chooses from the optional themes. I've underlined the optional themes that we're going with. So essentially you cover 3 themes per unit, 2 core and 1 optional. So in total you will cover 6 themes across your GCSE course. If you have a look down here at the How Will I Be Assessed, you'll see that Unit 1 and Unit 2, there's an hour-and-a-half exam for each one. They are both at the end of Year 11, and that makes up 80% of your final marks. There is only a mock exam in Year 10, no real exam. The final 20% comes from 2 pieces of fieldwork. Now, one fieldwork will be human geography based, one fieldwork will be physical geography based. So one is all about man-made stuff, one is all about natural stuff. You'll make a little portfolio about your findings from each field trip, and you'll take it into an NEA, a non-examined assessment. This is a 2.5-hour paper that's done under a high level of control, pretty much exam conditions, but you don't need to panic. You've got your portfolios with you, and all they actually ask you to do is talk about your findings in your portfolio. And that's where the final 20% of your marks come from. So stick this on the inside front cover of your book. The second sheet I want you to stick in is this one. At the beginning of each theme, I will give you one of these to act as a divider, and you'll stick it in, and it separates one theme from another and gives a little breakdown of the topics in that theme. Now you'll notice in the theme that we're going to be beginning today, it's all about landscapes in Wales, what they're like, how humans use them, and how that can cause conflict sometimes in national parks, for example. We're then going to focus on river processes and landforms, things like waterfalls, meanders, oxbow lakes, and then we're going to focus on coastal processes and landforms, things like headlands and bays and spits and things like that. We're also going to look at coastal erosion. A lot of people obviously have built their homes and businesses right on the coastline, and with sea level rise due to climate change, that is accelerating rates of coastal erosion. So we're going to look at how that affects people and how people put defences in place to try and combat that. This needs to get stuck either on the first page, or if you're like me and you quite like writing on that brand new first spongy page, you're more than welcome to stick this on the inside back cover instead. Okay, so that first one goes on the inside front cover, and this one either goes on the first page or on the inside back cover. Okay, so if you'd like to do that now, please. Okay, so the aims of today's lesson are, first of all, to improve our map skills. This is a geographer's bread and butter, looking at maps, being able to identify key features of maps. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing today. We're also going to identify and label key political countries of the UK and Europe. Political maps are human geography maps. They illustrate boundaries that have been decided by people. And we're also going to then identify and label natural physical features of Wales on another map. And finally, we're going to dig a little deeper into what we mean by distinctive features of a landscape and using landscapes in Wales to do that. You don't need to write these aims down each time. They're just there to give you a heads up of what the lesson is going to entail. So job number 1 on page number 1 of your book is to write this title, Distinctive Landscapes in Wales. And the starter that I'd like you to do is, from memory, in the back of your book with a pencil, draw an outline of the United Kingdom. See how you get on. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to draw that map in the back of your book and to write that title in the front of your book. Off you go. Okay, 1 more minute. Okay, so stop what you're doing. Now, normally at this point, I'd walk around the classroom and we'd all have a little bit of a giggle comparing our outlines of the UK. Don't be too hard on yourself. This actually was the very first task that my geography teacher asked us to do at the start of my GCSE, and even mine was horrendous. So it just goes to show that actually, even though we see an outline map of the UK all the time, we live here, we're quite passive. We don't actually really take it in and really pay attention to maps. And that's what this lesson is going to all be about. So did your map of the UK look anything like this? Probably not. Mine certainly didn't all those years ago, more years than I care to remember. So what I'd like you to do, you've got this on one of the printed worksheets, I would like you, underneath where you've written the title in the front of your books, to cut and stick this map in. I would then like you, if you have an atlas at home, great. Otherwise, use the internet to label the main countries of the UK and the main countries of Europe. Now, these maps are printed quite small, so you might want to number the countries and create a number key underneath, or color code the countries and create a color key underneath. It's entirely up to you. Label as many of them as you can. There are quite a lot there. Don't panic if you don't label every single one. The purpose of this is just to get a bit more familiar with the continent and the country that we live within. As always, whenever you create a diagram or a map, or a graph, it must have a title. So this one, these boundaries are made by people. It's a political map, a human-made map. So you're going to title it Political Map of Europe and the UK. So step 1, cut and stick this map underneath your title. Step 2, label both maps using a key if necessary. Step 3, make sure your map is titled. So pause the PowerPoint now and do that, please. Okay, so we're going to look at a more local scale now and zoom in on just Wales. And this is going to be a physical features map. So this is showing only natural things. Now, even when I've done this face-to-face in class with previous year groups, this can be quite tricky to visualize what I am actually asking you to do. So just take your time. Step 1. I want you to show the relief of Wales on here. Now, the word relief in geography means the shape of the land. Very simply, is it mountainous or is it flat? Now, the way that we show relief on a map, you can use contour lines, you can use spot heights, or you can use what we call layer shading. Now, layer shading uses colours to represent different heights, going from green in the lowland areas through various shades of yellow and orange in kind of the mid regions, through to browns and then purples in the highest regions. We're not going to make it that complicated. We are just going to use green for lowland and brown for upland. Use the internet and type in relief map of Wales. Find a map, and it should show you that around the edges is mostly green because that's where the land in Wales is at its flattest. And you've then got a massive area in the centre called the Cambrian Mountains, which is really mountainous, and a patch down here, which is the Brecon Beacons, that is really mountainous. Okay, so step 1 is don't be too perfect about it. Roughly represent on your map where the lowland areas are and where the upland areas are. Step 2, I'd like you to take a blue and with a line to indicate very roughly the course of the river, these 3 main rivers, the Severn, the Towy and the Tavy. Again, use the internet to help you. And then also colour the main bodies of water around the edges of Wales. Now, do not do what I see several pupils do every year and carry on merrily colouring all the way around here and turn Wales into an island. It happens every year. This is England on this side. Just leave it well alone for now. Okay, so once you've done the major rivers and the seas, you're then going to turn your attention to the national parks. Using a colour of your choice, roughly outline the areas of the 3 main national parks in Wales and label them. One is here, one is here, and one is here. Finally, the exact locations of mountains on a map are represented by small black triangles. I'd like you to use the internet to find the location of these 3 main mountains and put them onto your map. Now, like I said, it's quite difficult to actually imagine in your mind's eye what I'm asking you to do. The next slide does have a completed map on it. So if you want to have a quick look just to visualize what it is you're aiming for, but then try to be disciplined and go back and use the internet or an atlas to complete this yourself. Also fill in the labels that go with the starter letters here on the map as well. Then cut it out and stick it in. Title it Physical Features of Wales. So step 1, a green and a brown to indicate flat land and mountainous land. Step 2, a blue line to indicate the main rivers and colour where the other bodies of water are in blue. Next step, a colour of your choice to roughly outline the national parks and complete the labels. Final step, black little triangles for the 3 main mountains and complete these labels. Stick it in and title it. Okay, go ahead and try that now, please. Okay, so it should have taken shape something like this, hopefully. Please tell me you didn't colour all of this in blue. Yeah, because you would have turned Wales into an island, and it's simply not. You might have coloured all the way around here in blue to illustrate that these are the main bodies of water around Wales. This out to the west becomes the Irish Sea, and out to the Atlantic Ocean off the southwest coast of Ireland. So this is the physical features map of Wales. It shows everything, well, not everything, but it shows natural features, nothing to do with man-made elements. Okay, so what we're going to move on to now is what makes a landscape distinctive. So this is the last element of today's lesson. A question came up in the very first paper of this new specification, and there was a photo of a Welsh landscape and it said, describe the distinctive features. And it was answered really, really poorly because it was actually quite vague. People didn't really understand correctly what was meant by distinctive. If I asked you to describe a person's distinctive features, you would pick out things that stand out. Maybe they've got bright red hair, or really blue eyes, or a big nose, or a beard. You'd pick out something that stood out. And it's the same with landscapes. A distinctive feature is something that stands out. I'd like you to write down this subheading. Underneath it, with room to write labels around it, I'd like you to stick this picture. You have this on one of the handouts. This is the Gower Peninsula. A peninsula is an area of land that is surrounded by water on 3 sides. To give you your bearings, if you followed this coastline around, this is Swansea Bay, and round about here you would get to the LC2. Swansea city centre is here. If you drove along the M4 westward, you would come to Ponta Dulais, round about up here somewhere, and this down here is Llanelli. All right? So, using the internet if you need to, try to match each of these distinctive features to the end of the correct arrow. Just in case, agriculture is the proper word for farming. A salt marsh is a flat, boggy area of land right by the sea that's full of salty water. And an estuary is the area where the river widens right out and reaches the sea, and it's all sort of muddy and really flat, low-lying land. All right, so just in case you weren't sure on some of those key terms. So, subheading, stick this down, match the label to the correct arrow, use the internet to help you if you need to. Google Maps might be a good one here. Okay, so now that I've walked you through how to pick out a distinctive landscape and given you the distinctive features to match to the correct areas, what I'd like you to do is take those skills and apply them to the other 4 images of distinctive landscapes that you've been given. These are all really local to us. I'd like you to cut them out and try to identify at least 3 features in each photo that stand out, okay? Put an arrow pointing to the distinctive feature, and on the end of the arrow, label what the distinctive feature is. I've put a bit of a word bank down here at the bottom for you to help guide you with what it is you're actually trying to identify as being distinctive on each of these images. Okay, so this is the last task for today. Cut each image out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and stick it down with room to write 3 or 4 at least distinctive features around each one with arrows pointing to the feature. Okay, and that is the very first GCSE geography lesson complete. Hopefully what you have got out of this lesson is you've now got a nice, fresh, brand new GCSE geography exercise book all set up with a few pages of completed work. We've refreshed our map skills and become more familiar with a map of the continent that we are part of, the United Kingdom that we live in, and the country that we live in. And we've also become far clearer on what we mean by a distinctive feature in a landscape in Wales, and you'd then be able to deal with that past paper question that I mentioned far better than the year group did at the time. If you have any questions or queries whatsoever, I'm the only Gleeson A in Hub, so I'm easy to find and easy to email. To be honest, in these strange times, even if it's nothing to do with work, if you've got any questions or worries or queries and you just want to ask me something that is appropriate, then by all means drop me an email. Thank you for tuning in, and look out for the next lesson in the sequence that will be uploaded soon.